My name is Noah Mercer. I'm 29 years
Quem é
old.
esse aqui?
And the night my brother's fist connected with my jaw,
Oh, não sei como
my
um
own
gato
mother
tá dentro de um
whispered,
balde de metal.
"Don't ruin his future."
Eu
The
não sei
room
como
went
tem um
silent
balde de
except for my
metal desse
ragged
tamanho,
breath,
na verdade.
the taste of blood in my mouth, and the ringing in my ears. Hours
Exatamente
later,
nas
under the
medidas do
sterile lights of
gato.
urgent care, the doctor pressed an ice pack to my face and said, steady
Cuidado.
and unflinching, "You don't have to cover for him." That's when she picked up the phone. What my family didn't know was that the calls wouldn't stop there.
Posso bater?
And the next voice on the
Uma
line, the
física
winery
gamer.
asking about their missing payment, would hand me the one weapon I needed. Before I continue, tell me where you're watching from. And hit like and subscribe if you've ever been betrayed by family.
Vi lá embaixo.
I didn't always see the cracks. As a kid, you don't notice the subtle ways love gets divided. You just swallow
não.
it because you think it's normal. But looking
Mas
back
será que se
now,
eu passar aqui eu
I realize my whole
corto tudo?
childhood was training in silence. One of my earliest memories is sitting at the Mercer dinner table.
Ah,
The smell of roast
então não
beef
dá pra
filled the
passar.
kitchen,
Acabou a
butter
realidade
melting
do
over
cinema.
mashed potatoes, the clink of silverware echoing against ceramic plates.
Vou subir mais.
Mom leaned over Brandon's plate, sliding the thickest cut of steak in front of him with that soft smile she reserved only for him. "You need the protein.
Pô,
Honey," she cooed. My plate came next, steamed carrots and a small scoop of rice. "Noah, you're the younger one. You have to learn to
será que tem mais
share."
alguma coisa que eu possa
I
pegar?
nodded, biting down on the rubbery carrots, pretending not to notice the juice from Brandon's steak dripping onto his plate. Back then,
Ó, mano, o jogo tem
I told
açúcar.
myself it didn't matter. But the truth, it carved deeper than I wanted to
Cadê o
admit.
balde que eu
At school,
deixei aqui?
I worked hard. I was quiet,
Mano,
the
meu
kid
balde
who
sumiu.
double-checked his homework before sliding it into the teacher's tray. Sophomore year,
Achei.
I won first place at the state science fair, an experiment on wireless encryption. The auditorium lights blazed hot, the gold medal
Mano,
heavy
olha,
against my chest.
é...
I scanned the
A,
crowd for my
sempre que
parents,
aparecer um target e a gente
desperate to
clicar,
lock
tipo, ali,
eyes
ó, tá
and
vendo?
see them proud,
A gente
but their seats were
pula
empty.
o negócio pro
Later, I found out why they had left early to drive Brandon to
RT,
his tuxedo fitting for
o
prom.
R2 pra quem
No
joga
picture, no handshake. Just a text later that night.
no
Congrats, kiddo.
PlayStation. No PlayStation,
I
o
swallowed that
R2
too.
corre.
The pattern only grew sharper as we got older.
O L2,
In 2020,
ele
during the pandemic,
faz
Dad
isso
lost
aí,
hours at
ele
work.
meio que foca a visão
Mortgage bills
dele,
piled on the counter.
tá ligado?
I remember the tension in the house,
Bermia,
the hushed arguments at night,
então, tipo, calma
the
aí,
way
deixa eu
Mom
botar.
twisted her wedding ring when she thought nobody was looking. One evening,
Tá apertando o B,
Dad leaned
aliando
against the
o
kitchen
J.
doorway. Voice low,
Isso
but
a
heavy.
gente
We could lose the
pega,
house. I went back to my
pega
apartment
coisa,
and
parece,
transferred $8.
sei lá, provavelmente
200
grade
nearly
que
every dime I'd scraped together.
X não faz
I
nada,
sent it
o
quietly.
resto dos botões não faz nada.
No explanation. The only acknowledgement I got was a single-line text. Received.
Não sei
Thanks.
se vai fazer
No one
mais
asked
pra
where the
frente,
money
né?
came from, or what it cost me to give it. But I knew where the spotlight went Brandon. At the next
Ah, porra.
Sunday dinner, Dad raised a glass and said, "We're lucky Brandon's
Nossa,
here
se fosse
to
real
keep
mesmo,
our
eu engatava
spirits
assim na
up."
cara nesse momento.
My chest burned,
Ó,
but I stayed silent. Then there was the credit card. Brandon wanted to study abroad in Italy,
Mano,
just a short-term
aqui-
exchange. Nothing formal. He didn't qualify for the
assim,
card on his
eu
own.
acho que o gato não consegue levar isso aqui na
So,
boca.
Mom asked if I could co-sign. Just temporary. She promised. Against my better judgment, I agreed. 3 months later, late fees hit.
Faz a coisa que o
Collections
gato
called my
mais-
number.
mais gosta de fazer,
Not
não roubar
his.
coisa, não.
Brandon shrugged it off.
Viado, uma lata de
Relax.
tinta, mano.
I'll pay you back. He never did.
Uma lata de tinta
At
vazia.
family dinners, nobody brought it up.
É, pelo
Instead,
barulho que fez, pareceu.
I was lectured about being uptight with money. Holidays weren't safe either. Thanksgiving. The house smelled like sage and pumpkin pie. I had
Ah, não
spent
sei se
weeks
estão ouvindo
saving
o
up to
jogo
buy
muito
Dad a
bem.
premium tool, set chrome steel. The kind he'd always admired but never bought for himself. I watched as he unwrapped it, my chest swelling with quiet pride. He smiled,
Quem
set it
quiser aí,
aside.
mano,
Minutes later,
achar um
Mom rolled in a
funny
glossy
moments.
envelope. Brandon's gift, a fully paid trip to Hawaii
jogo
from
aí,
them.
mano.
The living room erupted
pra lá
with
e veio,
cheers, laughter, and photos.
Ó, essa tá
My
cheia.
tool set sat on the floor,
Eita porra.
untouched. I felt like a shadow at my own family's table. It wasn't just money. It was responsibility.
Nossa,
Two.
caiu tudo.
One night, Brandon scraped Dad's prized
Vamos ver
Mercedes
se eu
in the
realizo
driveway.
games, velho.
A fresh white scar across the door.
Tinha que tá
Panic lit his
aparecendo, deixa
face.
pegado no chão, hein, mano.
Don't say a word. He hissed
Ah,
at
me deixa
me.
assim.
10 minutes later, Dad summoned me to the garage. Fix the camera logs.
Mano, isso sim
Make
que eu
it
realizo
disappear.
games.
His tone wasn't a request. It was an order.
Vou pintar a sala toda.
Brandon leaned against the wall, arms crossed, relief washing over his face as I sat at the laptop, scrubbing the footage. Dad clapped his shoulder afterward. Boys will be boys.
Mas será que essa pegada
Just
some?
don't let it
Como
happen
é?
again.
Ah, ela
Not one
some.
word of thanks in my direction. Years later,
Ah, paia.
the pattern never wavered. When the neighborhood Wi-Fi crashed
Tá
2
um monte
days
de
before
bagulho
Christmas,
renderizando aí nessa tela.
Dad called me in a panic. I spent 6 hours
Será
in
que
their
isso daí
basement,
funciona?
untangling
Dá pra
cables,
subir ali pra saber.
resetting routers, rewriting configs until the system hummed
Ó,
again.
a gente pode apertar
At Christmas
com
dinner,
tapete.
he bragged to relatives. Good thing Brandon knew who to call. Got us a technician. Brandon laughed. Playing along,
Ah,
I sat
pipa
there,
é...
stuffing
Ah,
mashed
só
potatoes into
pessoas.
my mouth, pretending not to notice. Even my grandmother, Eileen,
Tá,
made it clear
LTRT.
where I stood. One humid summer, I took her to the hospital for a checkup. Insurance didn't cover the
Olha,
copay,
mano.
so I handed over $600 in cash. She squeezed my hand, smiled, and
Será
then,
que se eu fizer isso aqui
later that night,
muito assim, ele rasga o
turned to me
tapete?
with her sharp tongue. Brandon is the one who really looks after me. Some people don't deserve a seat at the table. The words sliced deeper than any bill ever could. I didn't know
Mano,
it
eu
then,
tô apertando a velocidade.
but each of those
tipo,
cuts was setting the stage for everything that came later.
e se eu apertar
They weren't
rapidão?
random
Apertar
slights.
rapidão?
They were lessons in how to disappear. But the thing about silence, it
Ai,
builds
meu Deus.
pressure,
Nossa,
and pressure always finds a crack. By the time I was in college,
vai segura
the
essa.
favoritism wasn't even subtle anymore. Brandon got a new car for his 21st birthday, black leather seats,
Ficou marca no
shiny
tapete.
rims that caught the sun like a spotlight. I got a used
Cool,
desk
no.
chair and a cake
No é
from
realismo
Costco with
games,
good
não.
luck. Noah
Nossa,
scrawled in
não sei
cheap
esse jogo pra
frosting.
ninguém, mano.
I told myself I didn't care. But when I wheeled that squeaky chair into my dorm room while Brandon revved his engine in the driveway, I felt something inside me sink. It wasn't just about the things.
Eita.
It was about the way everyone's faces lit up for him. When Brandon walked into a room, voices rose. Chairs scraped. Laughter burst. When I walked in, conversation shifted. Polite but clipped,
Ah,
like I was an afterthought. Even my
Nossa,
victories
pular
were
no balde.
invisible. Senior year, I landed an
Mano.
internship with a cybersecurity firm downtown. The office smelled of burnt coffee and new carpet,
elevador games, mano.
fluorescent lights humming overhead. I stayed late,
Nossa, nem fudendo.
teaching myself systems my supervisors didn't even have time to explain. When they offered me a job before graduation, I floated home, ready to share the news. At dinner that
É
night,
o gato gay.
I told them. The words tumbled out fast. Excited,
Nossa, dá...
hopeful, full-time
Será que
position,
eu consegui... Nossa, será que eu
benefits,
consegui entrar dentro da...
even a signing bonus.
Bagulho, deixa
I waited for the smiles,
eu me ajeitar.
the congratulations. Instead, Dad leaned back in his chair, smirk tugging at his mouth. Don't get cocky.
Não
Son,
dá pra entrar dentro
a
do
job
gato
isn't a
game, dos
career.
bagulho, mano.
learn that from your brother. He's figuring things out. Brandon smirked too, swirling his
Pô na
drink.
cara
Must be nice,
é vacilação.
sitting behind a computer all day. Real hard
É, a
work.
cara da mulher aí, ó.
I stared at my plate of overcooked chicken, the taste of ash in my
Já,
mouth.
eu juro, palmas.
Nobody clapped me on the back. Nobody said they were
Eu
proud.
acho que dava pra derrubar
I
coisa.
swallowed it. Again,
Não quebra.
moving into my own
Os vidros
apartment
são
at
super
23 felt like escaping orbit. No creaking stairs.
Mano,
No muted TV arguments in the background. No constant reminder that I was the lesser son. The place was small, just one bedroom. Beige carpet worn thin. A fridge that groaned at night. But it was mine.
calma aí,
I
momento
bought cheap
diálogo.
plates from Target. Built a desk out of particle board. And finally
Ah,
felt
não
like I
faz
was living on
ninguém.
my own terms. Still, I visited on weekends.
Desliguei o boot.
Guilt tugged me back. Family dinners,
Só
birthday
capa.
parties, cookouts, Each one a test I always failed. I remember one Christmas vividly. The living room glowed with twinkling lights, the air thick with cinnamon and pine. Brandon tore into a huge box, wrapped in silver paper, and pulled out a brand new gaming system. Cheers erupted. Photos snapped. I opened my gift next to sweater, 2 sizes too big. The tag still dangling from the sleeve. Mom kissed my cheek, whispering, "It's the thought that counts." I wore that sweater once,
Mano,
then folded it away at the bottom of my closet. Sometimes it was smaller moments that cut deepest. Like the night Brandon borrowed my car because his was in the shop. He returned it on empty.
momento.
Mud
que é o
splattered up the sides. A new dent on the passenger door.
Entrou
When I
assim.
pointed it out, Dad shot me a glare. "Don't be dramatic. It's just a car. Be glad you could help your brother." Or the summer
Mano, ainda
barbecue
não-
when
não
Mom leaned
aprendi que
across
o
the
botão
table,
faz isso.
smiling sweetly.
Se eu
"Noah,
soubesse que o botão
don't
faz
bring
isso, eu
Arya
ia
this
botar uma
Sunday.
bola de pelo no robô, com
It's just
certeza,
family.
mano.
Just family." The words hung heavy in the humid air. I looked at Arya, sitting right next to me, her face stiff with hurt. I wanted to
Essas
argue,
praguinha.
to demand they treat her with respect. But instead,
Tipo
I
umas
pressed my
pulgas
lips into a
gigantes.
thin line and stayed quiet. Later, when we drove home,
Ai, elas brincam.
Arya squeezed my hand.
Ai, sai.
"You don't have to keep swallowing this," she whispered. But back then, I thought I did. The favoritism wasn't only emotional.
Nossa, não.
It had numbers behind it. I saw it in bills, in balances,
Ah, não.
in the quiet math of family life.
Mas se eu
One
for
night,
sugado demais, eu
I
morro.
stumbled on a joint account Dad had set up years ago for
Cara,
emergencies.
tá me dando umas
I logged
pragas.
in, curiosity pulling me down the
mano.
rabbit hole. Transactions scrolled across the screen, restaurant
Ai, não.
tabs, electronic stores, cash withdrawals, most of them
buraco.
stamped with Brandon's name. Thousands gone. My stomach
Entrei
nodded.
pela
I
janela
printed
do
the
seu
statements,
Zé, mano.
shoved them into a folder,
Seu Zé
then
James.
shoved the folder into the
Várias
back of my
TVs.
closet. I didn't want to believe what I saw. When I finally confronted Mom about it, her response was soft, almost musical. "Your brother needed help.
Ô, louco,
You're
tá mandando
stable.
apertar B pra miar.
Noah,
Olha.
you can handle it. Handle it." Like that was my role absorbing damage. Patching holes. Never asking for thanks. The older I got, the more I realized my silence wasn't protecting me. It was feeding them. Every time, I stayed quiet. The favoritism grew bolder. Brandon's
Nossa,
smirk
mano.
sharper.
Que
My
triste.
parents' excuses
Eu
smoother.
peguei a cena de ação
The
mais
final straw
incrível.
came years before the
Eu
punch.
acho que não vai ter
Thanksgiving
nenhuma
again.
igual
The
aquela.
table was heavy with turkey and stuffing. Gravy steaming. The smell of cranberries sharp in the air. Dad raised a glass, his voice booming. To Brandon, for always keeping this family strong. My fork froze halfway to my mouth. Strong Brandon had no job,
Porra.
no bills paid on time, no plan except whatever whim hit him next. I wanted to laugh, but instead,
Mano, o
I chewed
objetivo
my
de
dry
vida agora,
turkey
tudo que
and
eu vi, eu vou
swallowed it like
derrubar.
always. I didn't know it then. But all of these moments were like tinder, piling up in the corner. Every slight, every missing thank you, every photo where Brandon stood in the center while I was cut off at the edge, it was all waiting for a spark. And when that spark finally came the night, Brandon's fist connected with my face. The night, my mother begged me not to ruin his reputation. I realized the fire had been building my whole life. Back then, though, I couldn't see the blaze ahead. I only knew the suffocating smoke of being invisible. The weeks after urgent care felt like walking a tightrope with no net. Every call from Mom was a trap. Every silence from Dad.
Nossa,
An
quase que eu
indictment.
caí. Foi isso mesmo?
Every smirk from Brandon. A reminder of where I stood. The first sting
não,
came when I
eventualmente, a
casually
única cena
asked
de ação
Mom
que
about
eu
Brandon's
foi essa.
engagement party. Her lips curved into that sugar-sweet smile. The one that always hit a blade. "Oh, Noah. It's just a small thing. We don't want to complicate the photos. Complicate the photos." As if my existence was a stain on their perfect picture. A week later, I bumped into Grandma Eileen at the farmer's market. The air smelled of apples and fried dough. She spotted me but angled her cart down another aisle, pretending not to notice. My chest tightened. I stood there holding a bruised peach. Suddenly 12 years old again. Watching her hug Brandon while I stood in the corner invisible. Then came the winery calls. 3 in 1 week. The first was polite. A woman named Camille asking if I could pass a message. The second was firmer. We've tried reaching your parents, but the payment for the Rhodes Mercer event hasn't cleared. The third had an edge. If this isn't resolved, the reservation could be voided. I stared at my phone after each call. Knuckles white. They were planning a perfect party for the golden boy. But behind the scenes, the bills were slipping. When I brought it up to Mom, her voice dripped with indignation. Don't make this about you. Noah, we'll handle it. But they didn't handle it. Not really. 2 nights later, Dad called an emergency family meeting. I drove over, already knowing what was coming. The kitchen lights buzzed overhead, casting long shadows across the table. Mom's eyes were red. Tissues scattered around her plate. Dad's jaw was tight. His voice clipped. Your mother's been crying because of this mess. You could make it easier. Noah, you have savings. Step in. Do the right thing for the family. I sat there, hands folded, heartbeat slow and deliberate. No, I said. Brandon leaned back, smirking. Don't act like a martyr. You love this. Finally, having some leverage. His words cut sharper than the punch. Because deep down, he wasn't wrong. I did have leverage now. For once, the family needed me, and that terrified them. The fallout came fast. A text from Mom. You've changed. I don't even recognize you. A message from Dad. This is tearing us apart. From Brandon, just a laughing emoji. I stared at the screen, a bitter laugh escaping my throat. They had torn us apart years ago. At work, I kept my head down, but the storm followed me. One afternoon, a cousin cornered me in the parking lot, voice low and sharp. Why'd you call the cops on your own brother? Overreact? Much I didn't answer. I just unlocked my car, slid in, and shut the door. My silence was louder than any defense. The next blow came from social media. Family group chat, buzzing with photos from Brandon and Talia's engagement shoot at the winery. Smiling faces, golden hour lighting, captions dripping with so proud and perfect match. My phone buzzed with notification after notification, each one a little dagger. Not a single tag for me. Not a single word about the brother who'd been left off the guest list. I threw the phone face down on the counter and let the silence stretch. But the silence didn't last. Camille from the winery called again. Her voice was softer this time, almost apologetic. Mr. Mercer, I probably shouldn't say this, but it wasn't a bank error. The account for the deposit was drained 24 hours before processing. Someone moved the money. That's why the payment bounced. The room spun around me. I gripped the counter. Knuckles white. I didn't need to ask who had drained it. That night, I drove past my parents' house, through the cracked garage door. I saw a shiny new UTV. Plastic still clinging to the seat. Dealer stickers gleaming under the fluorescent light. Brandon's laugh echoed inside as he bragged to a friend. I sat in the dark car, heart hammering. Rage a steady drumbeat in my chest. For once, the evidence wasn't just in my head. It was right there, gleaming under the garage lights. And I realized every lie, every manipulation, every sugar-sweet plea from Mom wasn't just favoritism anymore. It was theft. I drove home in silence. The image of that UTV burned into my mind like a brand. I didn't say a word to them. Not yet. But something cold settled in my bones that night. I had swallowed their favoritism my whole life. But this time, I wasn't going to choke it down. The storm picked up speed after that. 2 days later, Mom showed up at my apartment unannounced. She stood in the doorway with a Tupperware of lasagna. Her eyes glassy, her voice trembling just enough to sound rehearsed. Noah, honey,
Olha que desperdício
Can't you
de
see what
energia.
this is doing to us? Your father barely sleeps.
Susto.
Brandon feels attacked. This family can't survive if you keep pushing. I leaned against the counter, arms folded. Then maybe the family should stop giving me reasons to push. Her face crumpled. She pressed the lasagna into my hands like it was a peace offering. Don't ruin your brother's future over this. You don't know what it's like to carry the weight he does.
Alguém sabe se
I
nesse
almost
jogo a gente
laughed.
se encontra com
Brandon.
pessoas, mano?
Carrying weight. The only thing he carried was a new set of keys dangling from his pocket.
Até agora
That
eu só
night,
vi robô.
I found an envelope slid under my door. Inside was a photocopy of the family trust. Pencil marks scribbled in the margins, arrows pointing to Brandon's name. Little notes in Mom's handwriting. This can change. My chest burned. It wasn't subtle. It was a warning: fall in line. Or lose your seat at the table. I didn't reply. I didn't call. I just added the envelope to a growing binder on my desk. The page is heavy with receipts, screenshots, and emails. But the family wasn't done tightening the screws. The following Sunday,
Cara,
I tried
boa
stopping by
pergunta,
the
eu
house
me
for
fiz.
dinner. Jordan, my cousin, caught me on the porch before I walked in.
Pra cá?
She leaned close,
Não, não vou pra lá não.
her phone
Aqui
hidden
tem
in her palm.
buraco.
Don't go in. They're waiting to corner you. But I saw something you need to
Tem
see.
buraco.
She pulled up a
Vamos
photo
pra
of
lá.
Brandon grinning in the garage. Hand on the UTV's wheel. Dealer sticker still gleaming. The caption read, "Pre-dad present." My throat went dry. It wasn't just carelessness. It was arrogance. He thought no one would ever call him on it. I thanked Jordan and left before they could notice. Driving home, I couldn't shake the feeling that the scales had finally tipped. The pressure only mounted. My phone lit up with texts from cousins. Little jabs disguised as jokes.
Oba, a placa
Careful.
caiu, se eu não tivesse pensado.
Noah might call the
rápido.
cops again. Don't make him mad. He'll ruin the party.
Eu tinha caído
Each
na
message was
placa.
another brick in the wall they were building around me. Trying to box me in. To paint me as the problem. But behind the scenes, cracks were forming. Camille from the winery called once more. Her tone hushed. Like she knew she was crossing a line. Noah. I checked the timestamp on the transfer. It was the exact same day Brandon signed the invoice for that UTV. The bank records line up perfectly. Her words rang like a bell. Clean, precise, undeniable. Meanwhile, Arya watched me grow
Salve,
quieter,
Zé.
more methodical. She didn't push. One evening, as I sat at the kitchen table, papers spread like battle maps. She placed a cup of coffee beside me. You don't have to let them keep setting the rules. She said softly, maybe it's time you set the stage. I met her
Isso, trouxe
eyes,
esse bagulho aí como?
and for the first time,
Trouxe ele no
I
braço
let the
mesmo?
thought fully bloom. That week,
Ah, tá.
Mom tried one last tactic. A voicemail dripping with guilt if you go through with this.
Ah,
Don't
ficou da
expect
hora.
us to be there for you. You'll be alone. But the truth was, I already was alone, and it felt less terrifying than it used to.
Viu?
The final shove came during a family group chat blowout. Talia, Brandon's fiancée,
Ah, eu passo.
went live on Instagram from the winery. Perfect makeup, flawless dress, smiling as she panned across the vineyard. We've been abandoned. But love wins anyway, she said. And then Brandon's voice in the background. Sharp, careless, we just had to move money fast.
Inclusive,
Babe, stop talking. The live cut off abruptly. But not before Jordan screenshotted it. The whispers
será que eu
began.
vou precisar dele na próxima
Aunts
só vou levar?
messaging each other. Cousins replaying the clip before it vanished. For once,
Eita,
the cracks weren't under my feet. They were under his. That night, I sat at my kitchen table. Binder open. Papers rustling under the
inclusive,
ceiling fan.
desapareceu, mano.
I thought of every insult. Every erased sacrifice. Every moment they had painted me as selfish. Dramatic. Disposable. And I thought of that garage. The stickers still clinging to Brandon's shiny new toy. I closed the binder and exhaled slow. I had been on defense my whole life. Quiet. Careful. Patient. But patience has an expiration date,
Ó,
and mine had just run out. Stonebridge Winery shimmered under strings of golden lights that night. From the outside,
Valeu, mano.
it looked like every photo Talia had ever posted, vine rows stretching under a cold November moon,
Boa noite.
glass walls glowing with warm laughter. But this wasn't their stage anymore. It was mine. I had booked the same weekend they once told me was for kids who make us proud, and as guests filtered in colleagues from the hospital, a handful of cousins who'd kept quiet support, friends who had seen me bleeding but unbowed. I felt the balance tilt. Inside, the tasting room hummed with low jazz. The air smelled of oak barrels and sharp wine, the kind that cut down your throat before it warmed you. I stood near the head table, binder closed at my side, like a judge waiting for the gavel.
Fusível.
Arya's hand brushed mine. "You don't have to over-explain," she
eu
whispered.
achei.
"Facts are enough." I nodded, because tonight wasn't about rage.
No trem.
It was about clarity. The first ripple came when my parents arrived. Frank stiff-backed in his press jacket, Elaine trailing with that thin smile she wore like armor. They hadn't been invited, but they came anyway, standing just inside the doors, as if daring me to acknowledge them. Then came Brandon and Talia. Late. Of course. His jaw was tight, her eyes darting between the cameras of curious cousins. They weren't here to listen.
Cadê o último?
They were here to contain the damage. The room quieted as I stepped forward. My voice carried calm. "Sharp edges. Do you remember?" I said evenly. "When I asked about the engagement party, and Mom laughed, said I'd ruin the photos." The silence thickened. A few guests shifted uncomfortably. Elaine's lips pressed thin, but she didn't speak. I opened the binder, sliding the first page across the table where everyone could see. A bank log. Dates. Numbers. The cold language of theft. Here's the winery's request for payment. Here's the withdrawal.
Robô destruidão
24
aí, ó.
hours earlier.
Caiu a cabeça dele.
And here I lifted the next sheet. Jordan's photo glowing from a projector behind me is Brandon in the garage with his new UTV. Dealer's sticker still on the frame. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Someone hissed, "Oh my God." Brandon's face flushed red. "That's not Camille. The coordinator." Stepped from the back. Voice steady. I confirmed it myself.
Prova.
Funds were gone before we processed the payment. The room tilted, all eyes swiveling to Brandon. Talia tried to smooth it over, clutching his arm. "We just had to move money fast. Stop talking." Brandon snapped. Too loud. Too raw. The words cracked through the room like a whip. And just like that, the narrative collapsed. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. For years, I've been told to protect him, to clean up his messes, to stay quiet so he could keep his reputation. But facts don't bend to favoritism. This isn't about love. This is about accountability. The music had stopped. Glasses sat untouched. Even the winery staff lingered at the edges,
Robô do Bob Marley.
eyes wide, as if they'd stumbled into court instead of a celebration. Frank cleared his throat, desperate to regain control. "Noah, we don't air family business in front of outsiders." I met his gaze, unblinking. "Then maybe you should have handled it before outsiders had to clean it up." Elaine's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. But for once, the room wasn't bending to her performance. A cousin muttered, "He's right." Another nodded. And Brandon Golden Boy, untouchable son, looked small for the first time. His hands clenched at his sides, but his words stuck in his throat. I gathered the binder slowly, snapping it shut with a sound that echoed louder than any gavel.
Go.
"This," I said, my tone flat as stone, "is the last time I'll explain myself. From now on, I keep receipts, and I don't clean up after anyone." The tasting room hung in silence, broken only by the soft clink of a single glass set down too hard. I didn't smile. Not exactly. But my lips curved into something cold, sharp, final. And in that moment, I knew the Golden Boy's crown had cracked. When I walked out of Stonebridge that night, the cold air hit me like a second awakening. Behind me, the tasting room was still buzzing, voices hushed, questions hanging, reputations trembling. But I didn't turn back. Arya slipped her hand into mine as we crossed the gravel lot. "You did it," she whispered. Her voice wasn't triumphant, just steady, like she'd known all along this was inevitable. But I wasn't celebrating. Not yet. Because the binder I carried wasn't empty. The UTV, the bank log, Camille's testimony that was just the surface. Beneath those pages were years of records. Every time my account had been mysteriously lighter. Every bill I covered. Every silent bailout I never got credit for. And tucked inside, almost overlooked, was a discovery I hadn't shared. A set of withdrawals. Small but steady. Stretching back nearly a decade. All tied to a joint account my father once insisted I keep for emergencies. Withdrawals signed in Brandon's name. Money siphoned off when I was working night shifts. When I was barely scraping together rent. When I thought I was just unlucky with fees. It wasn't thousands, it was tens of thousands. Hidden in plain sight. And now, with my promotion at the hospital, with access to compliance tools and legal counsel who actually took me seriously, I knew exactly how to trace every cent. The Mercers thought tonight was the explosion. They thought the storm had passed. That all they had to do was survive the embarrassment. But what they didn't realize was that Stonebridge wasn't the finale. It was the opening act. I looked over at Arya as we reached the car. She was watching me closely, reading the silence I didn't fill. "You're not done, are you?" she asked softly. I let out a slow breath. Cold fog curling into the night. "No," I said. My voice wasn't angry. It was calm. Sharper than it had ever been. They thought they'd destroyed me. But they just handed me the one weapon I needed. I set the binder on the back seat. Pages rustling like loaded rounds. And next time, I added, almost to myself, I won't just defend myself. I'll rewrite the rules. The engine started. Headlights cutting across the dark vineyard rows. For the first time in years, I felt in control not of them, but of me. And that was enough to know the real reckoning hadn't even started. If you've ever been the outsider in your own family, you know the silence cuts deeper than the words. And if you've ever been told to protect someone else's reputation while you were the one bleeding, you know exactly how I felt. This story isn't finished. The binder on my back seat is still heavy. And the Mercers don't even realize the next chapter is already written. So if you've ever carried receipts no one wanted to see, hit subscribe. Because this story, my story, isn't over yet.